Yeah, sure. From Spain.
Yes, it'll be green. Hi, I'm Robert McBride of All Classical Portland, and I'm to blame that we're a little bit late tonight. I apologize. But he's done it before, you know, so he wanted to come out and warm up the crowd before I made my big entrance, but I got here just in time. This guy being Carlos Kalmar, the music director of the Oregon Symphony, of course.
Good evening. Hi, everybody.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the finest guitarists in the known universe, Pablo Sainz Villegas.
Good evening.
Who is going to play the incredibly beautiful Concierto de Aranjuez by Joaquin Rodrigo for us tonight. I don't say those names as well as you do.
Concierto de Aranjuez by Joaquin Rodrigo.
Yeah. Dig those R's. Are you going to play an encore tonight?
Well, if the audience wants me to play an encore.
Hey, wait a second. I mean, do you still want to hear the concert? Or should he just go for the He has many.
Yeah, it is a wonderfully beautiful concerto. The second movement especially heartfelt and moving. And this is a particularly gorgeous interpretation, very intense, no amplification, and yet, with just your hands and that guitar, you managed to fill this entire room with music and to hold everyone spellbound. It's magic.
Well, I think music in the end is about magic. It's about emotions. Music is the language of the emotions, and that's how we connect. And we connect through different musical expressions, and that's a journey that we are going to go together. And in the end, when I'm on a stage, I try to invite the people to participate of my own journey, so we can all together. And having Maestro Kalmar on the podium makes this journey even more special, unique, and unforgettable.
Did you two surprise each other with anything in this piece when you got together and talked about it or started rehearsing?
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, this is from my perspective. Having worked with Pablo once, and at that time, the artistic connection was just like this, and we understood each other. And since I know how he plays, so I thought, well, this is going to be great. That was my expectation, and yes, it's actually even better.
You love it when that happens.
Yeah, because the thing is that, yes, Pablo has all the virtuosity, he has a lot of colors, but what really gets me is how he plays the second movement. Because this, in a way, the second movement of the Concierto de Aranjuez is the centerpiece of the entire piece. Because the first movement is a certain style of kind of flamenco-ish, very erect, very rhythmic music, and the last movement is a little more in the clouds, like a ballerina taking off. But in the middle there is this very heartfelt movement, which I assume that Pablo would say something fairly similar. It's difficult to actually really be sure whether it will work when, in an interpretation, you pour so much heart and soul into the music. You actually, most of the times with Pablo, I am sure it works because he plays so well. And sometimes there is maybe the connection is not as strong. Now, we felt in the 3 nights that we have done it together that the connection to you, the audience, was immensely strong. And in that sense, there is something surprising and something to really take home. That second movement, I didn't know before that actually a guitar can be such an expressive instrument.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. No, I've also discovered beautiful things working with Maestro Kalmar. And especially in this second movement, it's difficult to explain, but the magic in this movement is between the notes, and we've digged together between those notes to really get into the deepest emotion of the composer. And for me, in the end, there are three emotional processes in music, in classical music, which is the composer, when he wrote the music, he was putting his emotion, his experience into those notes. And then, you know, me, when I was practicing the piece many years ago, and every time I go back to the piece, and every time I go on a stage and I play that piece, I try to connect to those emotions that Rodrigo was feeling at the moment he composed the piece. And then the third emotional process for me, and most important, I would say, because without it there's no complete circle, is the audience, because with your sensitivity you are making us to connect the emotions of the composer, my own emotions, with your own emotions, and that's the completion of the circle. And when that happens, it's magical. So without you, there's, you know, we would be missing a big part of the musical process. So we need more and more sensitive people, as you are, to really make music something transcendent.
Isn't he wonderful? I just love him. Specifically about your interpretation, vibrato, bending notes, the way that you express the emotion in those technical terms is unique in my experience with this piece. Do you mind talking about that a little?
Sure. So the vibrato and the bendings are two expressive tools we use on the left hand. So I like to develop as many colors and as many expressive tools as possible. So then I can choose and take the one I want to express what I want to express. So in the vibratos, there is this movement that is up and down, let's say, or left and right, and you can keep a vibrato for a longer time. So to sustain the notes and make it really vibrate into your heart, that's what I use. And then there is the bending, which is basically electric guitarists use it all the time, and it's much more dramatic, but you cannot hold the notes that much, so it's like wow, but you know it's like a bumping when you are driving, I don't know, and it's also very expressive. So these are the two vibratos I use, and each one in a different case.
The story behind the slow movement of this concerto was known to guitarists for a lot longer than it was known to the rest of us. Rodrigo and his wife, young and happy together, and then a miscarriage at 7 months into the pregnancy, and that's the pain that just comes screaming out in the music. And when I interviewed you for Northwest Previews, you also spoke of the anger. And you could hear that in the way you play the guitar and see it too. You really are feeling that and expressing it.
Well, I don't have kids, and I guess I cannot truly imagine what has to be losing a child. But I guess we can all get close enough. And he puts all that emotion, all that anger, all that denial into music. And that's why it's such a moving and dramatic movement. So the first chords is setting the mood and the tempo, and then the English horn enters with this beautiful melody that after his 8 measures I'm going to repeat. And right there, very melismatic, is pure anger, and it's a conversation with God. That's what he explained, saying, why did you take my son away? Why did you take it? Why me? Which is a very sensible question to ask. And then, you know, the movement evolves into different dramatic moments and also very, let's say, thoughtful moments. Like the first cadence I'm going to play just by myself is a very thoughtful, like, what's going on? Am I getting crazy? And then, you know, he's getting more and more excited and angry, and the second cadencia comes, and, you know, very dramatic, and more, and I finish with very strong rasgados, and then, boom, Maestro Kalmar and his orchestra comes into the most beautiful theme of this concerto that I've ever played with any orchestra. The way he plays this connection with God is sublime. And after that connection with God, there is this beautiful moment that he prepares so well, and you will listen because he's going down, and the flutes are going to invite me to this beautiful, very delicate pianissimo part. And this is one of the most beautiful parts, in my opinion, because, as Rodrigo said, in that moment is where he and his wife accepted the fact that, you know, his son was away. And somehow that acceptance is what makes this beautiful and peaceful ending of the second movement, with 3 harmonics that represent the ascendant soul of Rodrigo's son.
Fingernails are very important to a guitarist, the right hand. Have you ever broken a nail doing that in a concert?
Not yet.
Good.
Yeah, that'd be terrible. So, yeah, it's always a matter of trying to be as expressive as possible, but, you know, not being too dramatic that is going to collapse the whole thing. So you want to, and as a professional guitarist, I like to explore the limits and never go beyond those limits. But those limits are really in the limit. So a little bit more and we'd be, you know, down the cliffs. So that's also the amazing thing. It's like going to a circus, right? And the guys are doing all these triple mortal, or I don't know, all these dangerous things. And the more dangerous, the people more enjoy it. So there is that aspect also in music, no? I mean, people went to see Paganini to, wow, he's going to die almost. And that's also the exciting part of music making, and also for the audience, I think.
I think that Pablo here says one of the most important things that are in music, because you please understand this idea of risk. Not only in the sense that things that have to be played fast get played so fast that if you push it too much, your fingers might not do it, and then you fall down the cliff. I understand that also in the sense of where an interpretation actually can go, even when it's very quiet. And speaking about, of course, we practically didn't talk about the first and third movement of the Rodrigo Concierto Aranjuez, which are great movements, but the centerpiece is the second. And just the fact that a composer manages with one guitar, one bass note, and the melody of an English horn to captivate an entire world and develop it from there is fantastic. Now, the idea of risk, I always say to myself, if you don't go near what I would dare to say musical danger, you're not doing your job. Things that are not, in Pablo's words, risky, do not matter. And it translates both to virtuosity as well as to things that are very quiet, soft, and slow. You always have to kind of push for the edge, but never. That's also for me, it's such an, he said so many things that are so true. Always go to the limit of what musical expressiveness and freedom allows you, never go beyond. Because then there is a certain way to play where you break kind of the style, the rules, goes too fast, etc. And I think what Pablo said, I just wanted to say, yes, that's exactly what it is.
You know, and that's why we connected so well in music, because I think we breathe music in a very similar way. And that's for me, you know, after so many years of your experience that I still don't have, you know, it's a great inspiration for me. So thank you.
Pablo, how old are you?
I'm 37.
37, and you started playing guitar when you 5, 6?
6.
6. Yeah.
See, he's still at the age where you can ask.
Yeah. And I'm just rude enough to do so. Our conversation reminded me of something that George Carlin used to say about comedy, at least the way he approached it, and that was to find where those limits were and then go beyond them, just a little bit. But
when
that's
you
not
do
what we
comedy, you can.
Yeah, it's a different. It's a different thing. I'm torn. We have this wonderful artist here who speaks so eloquently about music making, but should we talk about the whole concert? We should? Okay. Did you hear the whole concert? Have you heard everything?
Yes.
Okay, so Gabriela Lena Frank's 3 Latin American dances begin the show. They're great fun, and the orchestra has a blast with them. What was your reaction?
Well, I was in my dressing room, and I was dancing the pieces, literally. I mean, you can imagine really doing that, and it was fantastic. One thing I loved about his music, he brings his roots, his deepest roots from Peru and South America, and converts something into the classical music orchestral scene that is beyond any imagination possible. And I love that. It's somehow what Falla did with his music. He took the roots of flamenco and folk music from Spain, and he created something new that it was a different thing by itself. So that's what I hear in her music, and what I hear is truth. And that's something so important in art, authenticity and truth. And that's what also makes us to connect to something that is real. And she found a style on herself, and you know, it was beautiful to me.
And then the concert ends with Navarra. So we go to Scotland in between for Mendelssohn's Third Symphony, and then come back to Spain for Navarra at the end, this flashy 5 minutes of fun after the Scottish Symphony, which Carlos has described as dessert.
It's time for this. The Navarra by Isaac Albéniz this is a piano piece. So Albéniz, who was a piano virtuoso at the very start of the 20th century, and actually very late 19th, start of 20th century, got very sick. And it was actually something that later in life killed him. And he just needed mainly to abandon his career as a pianist. And he started to focus more on his compositions. And he wrote this series of pictures of Spain called Iberia. And the last one is Navarra. And Navarra, which is by Albéniz in its original version for piano, he did not even finish. He died before. But he instructed his student how to kind of finish the piece. And so it has been published. And of course, you look at these pieces by Albéniz in the piano version, you think it speaks orchestra, because it's really rich. It's the way the pianist, it's really difficult to play. And the way the piano works, it's an orchestral understanding of how the instrument works. And of course, there were a few composers, instrumentalists who tried to work with it. And one of them who really succeeded was Fernando Arbós, who orchestrated this, and that is the version we are playing. One little kind of hint is the ending in Arbós is very different. In the original Navarra, but that is very pianistic, so to speak. If you buy a CD of the original version, and you compare it to what we play, it's two different things. But the orchestration, it's very rich. It's like, I mean, because I know you already like the allegory with dessert. It's a very creamy dessert.
I was thinking of that last night when I was eating at Higgins and concluded the meal with some cheesecake with figs. Oh, man, it was good. I didn't need those calories, but I did it in your honor, thinking of Navarra. You know, Pablo, you referred to the beautiful English horn solo in the Rodrigo, which is so beautifully played by Kyle Mustaine. You're going to hear some wonderful clarinet playing, too, in the Mendelssohn Symphony. I love it when we get to hear solos like that from within the orchestra and be reminded of how much talent we have on this stage. And it must be great fun for them to be able to do what they do and have us hear it.
Well, this is, I keep on repeating, well, actually I don't repeat it because everybody knows that I will lobby for this orchestra all the time. I keep repeating the fact that so many soloists, conductors, now even composers come through this wonderful hall here, hear the orchestra, work with them and say, this is just a phenomenal band. Gabriela Lena Frank, she unfortunately had to leave today in the morning. She was here for the first 2 nights. She said this is practically the best interpretation of her dances that she heard. And of course, when you have the Mendelssohn and it's all over, there are solos, parts where the brilliance of this orchestra is on display, where not only the virtuosity is called upon, but also the heartfelt. I mean, we're talking about a piece that was inspired by Holyrood Castle near Edinburgh, which is the place where Mary Queen of Scots was crowned, where she had her lover, where her lover was murdered, and other things that happen in Scotland. And I always explain, I mean, just to use an analogy, this is a symphony, it's a lot of music, it's so well written, and we are in Scotland, so the weather is not always great, so you hear a storm at the end of the first movement, and you hear you hear the heartfelt music for the love life of maybe Mary Queen of Scots, and then you hear a last movement that has this very interesting tempo marking, meaning how fast, which is, yes, it says allegro, which, I mean, half the universe of classical music says allegro, which means fast, but it says allegro guerrero, meaning
Warlike.
warlike.
Yeah.
So it's a little this way. So, and the great thing about the symphony is not only, the ending is actually spectacular because of maybe what it means. And so I kind of make up a story. So at the end, we are at least in, you all know, we are in Scotland, and there is this Allegro Guerrero, there's battle and battle and battle, and it's great fun, and then it dies down completely into silence. And you know something is coming. And yes, something is coming. And this something reminds me always Mel Gibson, Braveheart, the last speech. That's Mendelssohn wrote it for this movie.
Such a forward-thinking composer.
He was a genius after all.
He was, absolutely. So, Pablo, will you be signing autographs at intermission?
Yes.
You will?
Yes, I will.
At
Yes.
the, Jace, at the table in the lobby with the CDs?
Exactly.
Okay, good. And Carlos, will you promise to bring this man back?
Well, we already have been talking, of course, because, see, the thing is that Pablo is also a lobbyist, not only for this wonderful instrument, but he's a lobbyist amongst composers. When you have a man of this quality, of course, composers go to him and he engages them into conversation, and the end is maybe a new concerto. Because the literature for guitar is quite thin in terms of older music. There are so many great composers who simply ignored the guitar because it is not part of what we usually see. And so it's great to see an artist like Pablo who goes out, talks to several composers and has already some music that we might not even know that he's willing to bring to Portland. So, I mean, you bet. But in the meantime, of course, for whoever is really falls in love with his playing, April 23rd and 24th, I think, Valeria knows, she's somewhere here, you have to come to Madrid and hear us again.
Yes, you are very welcome to come to my country and listen to us April 23rd, 24th, and then we can all go to my region, Rioja, and do some wine tasting. So, who's in?
Life could be worse, huh? Thank you so much for coming tonight, and we're videotaping this one. We usually videotape on Saturday nights, and we did. But such a special opportunity to have Pablo here with his eloquence and his heart to speak to you. We wanted to capture that on tape too, and we'll share that on the website allclassical.org. Please tell your friends. You're going to love, love, love this concert. Carlos Kalmar, Pablo Sainz Villegas.
Thank you.
Robert McBride.
Yes.
And now.
Thank you.